Hello and welcome to Power Test 24 conference here in Dallas, hosted by NETA. I'm Ellen Parson, editor of EC&M, and I'm here in Dallas for a two-day event. Here with me today, Ben Clark. Thank you for being with me today. He is the technical director of training at RESA Power. Ben, thanks so much for taking the time today to talk with us about your presentation, which was titled Testing for Optimal Solar Performance. So I guess let's start with, a lot of the EC&M readers are definitely into solar, wind, EVs, which is right up your alley. So you want to start with just what are the trends right now with solar as far as, activity in the United States? Obviously, probably California, Texas, but are there other hot areas that are starting to grow?
Yeah, so yes, California, Texas, where the sun is,
right,
are huge areas of opportunity, right, for solar. Mm-hmm. But then, where we're also seeing it is states that are pretty locked into providing a renewable energy output within a certain time frame. So like the state I'm in, Massachusetts or Boston area, they have a requirement that they have to have so much percentage of renewable energy by some date, right? And so all the utilities around there are scrambling to find out how do we supply this within our territory, especially in some cities and municipalities where they have a very low amount of footprint that the city actually owns or that the municipal owns. So they have to either acquire land to place renewable energy systems or potentially buy credits from somewhere. So there's a bunch of different ways they can go about it. But we're seeing it all over the U.S.
Okay, and then you work all over the U.S., right? Like RESA Power, so you go in and you either do the testing for them, you teach them how to do it, like how does that work? And then do you have regional areas that you go around and help with all these different areas of where all of the work is?
Yeah, so we are a NETA accredited company, so most of our work revolves around testing, right? So we do advise on certain things, but most of it is testing, and there are some unique aspects to testing that, it's great to have a NETA accredited rep or employee, contractor that can help the customer through the process of actually making sure that their system works the way it should. NETA as a association actually is creating standards to allow technicians to have a better understanding of what needs to be done for these things. But everything's always in development, right? So, we always need to be going back to those standards, IEEE, IEC, NETA, and making sure our technicians are in the know.
Okay, that makes sense. And yesterday in the presentation you talked about it was, somewhat complicated, but could you give us just the highlights for talking about an overview of the essential commissioning and maintenance techniques that are necessary on these installations, because that seemed really pretty in-depth.
Yeah.
So what are the highlights there?
So as far as what testing needs to be done, there's a lot of components that are very similar. Everything that connects to it is very similar. We still have the same breakers, we still have the same cables, but what's new are the panels, the modules, where everything grounds, those sorts of things, that's a little different. How do we verify the performance of it? Because it's not just, hey, we're trying to verify that these things exist and they're wired correctly, but what is their actual performance as part of as an individual component as well as part of a system?
Right.
So, we do have to be considerate of that, and in a solar system, we try and take the smallest piece and then start attaching it to bigger pieces, right? So we want to test all the way down to the panel level, and then we want to break it out into a bigger and bigger system. And then once we verified those small components, we can make those big components and then interconnect all of them.
And that's like a massive undertaking depending on what type of situation you're talking about, right?
For sure, absolutely. And there's a lot of techniques that you can speed things up, and in this industry, you'll find that our technicians are very creative in how they can do things more efficiently. But these are types of jobs that people haven't done before, and not everybody's learned those nuances yet. So,
and you were talking too about the specialized training that it takes. So how does one, just an electrician or an electrical professional, if they want to get into that type of work, how do they take on those kind of jobs?
Yeah, so I think one of those things is being qualified. That's an important aspect of any position, right? Whether it's mine or yours or our technicians, right? Is being qualified. And so there is training available. There's NABCEP, that is a solar certification, but it's more for residential, small commercial. We're not talking about huge facilities, that have a huge fleet of solar or EV or however. So, there are some nuances that come into that,
Okay. Well, in our magazine, at least, we've run several articles on solar, including one recently that was on solar farms and how they're just starting to boom, but there are also a lot of challenges with them. For example, community pushback is one, equipment and labor shortages, and then a congested grid. So would you say there's a shortage of people who are able to do this work, and that's kind of where like your firm comes in? Because there's so much work to do. Are there enough people to do the work?
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely. I mean, you have to be part of the solution. If you want to be part of the solution provider to the customer, you have to be training your people on these things, right? And what we find is that with certain companies that go and do this type of work and they're not qualified, that they're not really stepping back and being like, yes, most of this equipment is very similar, but do my technicians or electricians have the skill set necessary to do this type of work? I would say there's a huge labor shortage in anything renewables related, as far as that goes. And places like NIDA are a place where you can go and you can gain more knowledge, EC&M, right, where you can actually receive information and potentially participate, right? Like you may have found a solution that works and you can share that with the industry, and that's the only way we're going to progress to make these things happen.
Or it could be a new revenue path for someone who didn't do that type of work before, and they're trying to get into that. So okay, well, I think we're about ready to wrap up. So any final words of wisdom or best practices for our readers and viewers who are looking to do this type of work or optimize their solar installations?
Yeah, so I mean, don't be afraid of training. I think reaching out across the aisle, sometimes even if it's a competitor or somebody who may want the same type of work as you, and just share information.
Don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, don't be afraid to do that. I mean, everybody here is, for the most part, willing to share information, at least I hope so. But I would say that's generally accurate. You can reach out across the aisle and say, hey, what would you do in this scenario, right? And personnel trade between companies all the time, so there's nothing wrong with that. And from there, we can all grow as an industry.
Well, that is great advice. I think that's a good place to wrap this up. So Ben, thank you for talking with me today and sharing all this insight with our viewers. This is Ellen Parson with EC&M. Thank you and have a good day.